we'd like to start. And for those of you who are still downstairs, please come in. Jeremy, could you ask the others who are still downstairs to come to the auditorium and join us? And maybe you can sit forward at the back there. For those of you who sit at the back, please come forward so that we can fill this row here in the front. Please hurry. Good morning. I cannot hear you well. Can you speak louder? Are you all happy to be here today? Yeah, that's the spirit. Okay, I'm very glad that you're here today. And as usual, our sequel of the BIMUS University with Faculty of Economics and Communications, we have a series of talk shows and seminars that's been carried on from the beginning of the year. Now today we have a very special guest coming all over from Indonesia. We have two guests here. Okay. One is Mr. Jed Donberg. He's the head of, he's the head of the Buy America at America. And he's actually, I'm sorry to say, we're supposed to be classmates when we were back in Rome a few years ago. Just a few years ago. So, good to see him again here in Indonesia. He's posted here in Jakarta. It's the first Our second guest for today, we have the speaker, which is Miss Mary Ellen Muckerman. That's a very German name. Yeah. So before I will go over her dossier, a short review about her backgrounds and everything, I'd like to forward my mic to Mr. Jeff Donberg to say a few words about this, this occasion that we're having today. Thank you.
Good morning. Selamat pagi. So my name is Jed Donberg, and I am the Deputy Cultural Affairs Attaché at the U.S. Embassy here in Jakarta, and also Director of At America in the Pacific Place Mall. I hope we see many of you at Pacific Place at the At America Center. Today we are very honored to bring to you Mary Ellen Muckerman, who is a VP in Branding and Marketing from Mozilla. And she's here as part of a program that the Embassy has been doing for many, many years, which is part of the partnership, the friendship that that Indonesia and the United States share. Where we bring and we introduce to Indonesians our friends, as you would any kind of friendship. You introduce your friends to your friends and hope that they will build relationships, build bonds, inspire each other to think about what might be possible, what they could do, and provide novel ideas and share those concepts with each other. This is an important part of what the U.S. wants to do in collaboration with Indonesia, especially Indonesia's youth, as you think about how we will change the world and make it a better place. Certainly the history of America is all about change. It's about adapting the world and making it a world that we want to live in. And this is something we hope that Indonesians will take away from our relationship and our conversations, that they have a role to play making the world a better place, growing Indonesia, and growing the relationship to the United States and Indonesia. So we're very honored to be part of this speaker program and to be able to bring Mary Ellen to meet with you all. I would be amiss if I didn't also mention the Embassy's flagship program for young people in Indonesia. This is the Waisili program. It's Young Southeast Asian Leadership Initiative. And this is a program for Indonesians and people throughout Southeast Asia, through ASEAN, between the ages of 18 and 35. And it's a program that helps to develop the skill sets that you need to be a leader. And not just develop them, but practice them today. We believe that you're never too young to be an actor. You're never too young to be a leader in your communities. The best time to start being that leader is today and now. And so we have this program. It is free to join. There is no qualifications other than age that you can sign up for it. You can just go search it on the web and you'll find Waisili, Y-S-E-A-L-I, and sign up. We offer workshops and trainings at the highest levels of involvement. You get an exchange program to go to the United States and work or study in the area, field of your interest. And it's been a very successful program. We have almost 25,000 Indonesians as part of this program. Indonesia is probably the most active country in the region for this program. It's really a fantastic opportunity, and people have been having enormous successes. The networking that's possible between young people throughout ASEAN and the role they're playing in making changes and differences in their communities is really inspiring as I hear the stories coming in. So again, I thank you very much for coming today, and I hope you really learn a lot from this conversation. I know I've been learning a lot just listening in. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody, did you hear that? It's a very good opportunity for you as Venusian to be here today. Yeah? And I'd like to hear, maybe after this, everybody signed up for that YC
program.
Yeah.
Yes, YC.
Okay. And maybe you might end up in the United States for an exchange. Who wants to do so? No, not?
Nobody wants to go to America?
You don't want to go to America? No?
No?
Really? Oh, what a pity. These are the hotel management students. They're all wearing uniforms. So, hi guys. So I hope you can join. There are a lot of hotels there as well. And casino. You cannot work in casino, right? Casino?
Casino?
Casino.
Yes, of course you can work in a casino in America.
No. Anyway, so just as a icebreaker. So I hope all of you sign up. And how many students will be eligible to be accepted? 1, 2?
There is no limit to the number of people who can sign up.
There is
no restriction on signing up. So you should sign up. It's all about how active you are. The more active you are in the program, the more you get out of it. And the more active you get, the more competitive you'll be for some of the higher level programs and opportunities that are made available.
It's a great deal. I mean, it's for free. And you're going to the United States, you see Donald Trump, and you see the Statue of Liberty for free. Wow. What an occasion. So, go for it. Okay? Okay. Just let me know, because that's my KPI too. All right. Now, can we turn to Mary Ellen? Thank you. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Good. Let me see this lady here next to me. She's the vice president of Mozilla. Everybody knows Mozilla? Yeah. Do we use Mozilla? Yeah. Well, that's a word. She is responsible for brand strategy and services. She works with Firefox product and Mozilla program teams to craft the stories and experiences to share with the people. And she also works with the brand engagement, content strategy, creative, project management, web development, and events teams to bring stories and experiences to life through all sorts of different campaign projects and programs. So prior to joining Mozilla, Ms. Mary Ellen Mukerman was working in several years in brand consulting and had the chance to partner with organizations like Smithsonian, SF, MoMA, Google, Target. I bought some things in Target before, okay, to help identify what makes them unique and relevant to their audiences. And then apply the strategic idea both internally to guide their culture and capabilities and externally to influence the products, services, and communications. She's also worked in big retailers like Target. Target is a supermarket, it's like a hypermarket, and McDonald's, where she learned no matter how brilliant the idea is, what really matters is how it resonates with the customers and how well it can come to life on the ground every day in real life. So she graduated, she holds two degrees from the University of Minnesota and the University of Miami. So here with us today, this morning, to your very eyes, Ms. Ellen Mukerman. Let's have a... Use the bench. I can do this? Yes. Yeah. You can want to walk around? It's so cool.
I'll walk around. So I'm trying, I only speak English, but I'm trying to learn some Indonesian. So, Selamat siang. Okay, excellent. That's the last Indonesian I'll be able to speak during this presentation, so I'm sorry. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is how you can think about brand and marketing programs for the future, and how you can make them more relevant and more competitive for your businesses. And the way that I'd like to suggest that you could do that is to adopt an open source mindset. So that's what I'm going to talk to you this morning about over the next 20 minutes or so. I'm going to share my experiences of working at Mozilla and my experiences of working in other companies over the past 25 or so years, and share with you how I think having an open source mindset really represents the future for marketing and branding. So, as you just heard, these are a few of the places that I've worked since I've started my career. And you can see some brands up here that probably look pretty familiar. The first one, McDonald's, the Golden Arches, that people see all over the world. And you can really count on that to have, you pretty much know what the menu is going to be, right? You know that you're going to be able to get a hamburger, some French fries, no matter where you go. And then there'll be specialty items, depending on where you are. I also worked for Target, which is a hypermarket, so it has hundreds of locations within the United States. And then I went into consulting, so I worked with a lot of different brands, including the Smithsonian, which is a big cultural institution in the United States. You may also be familiar with them because they do TV programming and documentaries as well. I worked with DreamWorks. They make Shrek and a lot of different other types of animated movies. I also did some work with Google as well. And then for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been working at Mozilla. And when I look back on my career, those first sets of companies that I worked with all had something in common. And what they had in common is that they followed a very traditional business model and a very traditional marketing model. And what that means is that most of the marketing and branding work was done kind of in secret, behind closed doors. And there were, you got rewarded and you were considered successful when you kind of emerged from behind those closed doors and had the right answer. When I came to Mozilla, I had to learn a whole new way of being successful from a brand and marketing standpoint. And that is really because what Mozilla is based on is an open source model. I am not an engineer. I don't know how to code. I've been in marketing my entire life. But I've learned so much from learning how open source has impacted the way that engineers make software and thinking about how we can make marketing programs more relevant. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. But first, let's start with open source. What is open source? Does anyone here is familiar with that term? Yeah?
Publicly accessible.
Publicly accessible. So it's an idea. It's an idea of how software code can be developed. And the beginning of open source is really as old as the internet itself. So when the internet first started, it was really mostly used by technologists and scientists and government officials as a way to communicate. And then as the internet grew and became used by regular people every day, the ways that it was used became more different also. So in addition to technologists and scientists sending communication back and forth, people began to search, they began to use email, they began to shop. And what started to happen is that the internet became more commercialized. More corporate entities, more corporations were starting to build platforms on the internet. And what started to happen was the original promise of the internet, that it would be openly accessible for everybody, started to change. The internet started to become more closed, more proprietary. And so a group of software developers got together and said, there's got to be a different way to do this. If the internet becomes closed down like this, we're not going to be able to use it in the way that it was intended. And so that's the beginning of this idea of open source code. The definition of open source code is that code should be open for anyone to freely use, distribute, and modify, which was very different than the direction that it was heading as people like Microsoft and other companies started to build more code that only they could use. Three really important ideas underlie this idea of open source software. And that's the idea of transparency, of collaboration, and participation. And what I want to do now is show you how these ideas, how you can translate these ideas from being about how you build software to being about how you build marketing and branding programs, and show you some examples. So let's first start with this idea of transparency. From an engineering standpoint, there is a practice called view source. And what view source means is you can ideally double click on any piece of code and see what's underneath it, see how the code is built. So what that means is the code is auditable and it's inspectable. Anybody can test it, but also people can learn from it. They can apply that same type of code to something that they're building as well. So if you take that idea and translate it from an engineering idea to a marketing idea, what I found is that what transparency means is that companies have both the responsibility and the opportunity to be really authentic and to help their customers understand the origin of their ideas and their business. But why is this important? Well, if you look at it, what this chart shows is the 10 most trustworthy companies from the S&P stock index, which is an American stock index. And you can see the difference between the most trustworthy companies, which are in blue, and the rest of the companies, which are in yellow. And so over the years, and apologies, I realize I have a typo on that very first year, but since 2012, the difference between the most trustworthy companies have meant that they have been between 25 and 50% more profitable than the other companies. But this is hard to do. In another survey of global CEOs, 69% of them say it's becoming extremely hard in today's digital economy to grow and maintain trust. And customers are agreeing with that. So this chart on the other side, on the left-hand side, it represents all the different industries that customers say, these are hard industries to trust. I don't trust them. So you can see most industries are on that side of the chart, not the other side of the chart. And then we take a look at millennials. For millennials, transparency is an extremely important aspect of how they choose a company that they want to support, how they choose the companies where they're buying products and using services from. And millennials are losing trust in corporate motivations. And so you can see in this survey, the percentage of millennials who say that businesses behave in an ethical manner in 2018 was less than 50%. And that took a 17% drop from 2017. So millennials are very quickly losing trust in corporations. And why is this important? Because there's so many millennials. Millennials represent the largest economy on the planet. There's 2 billion millennials. And really important for this room is where they live. 58% of those millennials are in Asia. So we really need to understand what motivates millennials when it comes to brand loyalty, and we need to be able to design marketing and branding programs around that. So let me give you some examples of people who are. This is a company based in the United States called Blue Apron. A really growing business category in the US is this idea of home delivery of meal kits. So as people become busier and busier, they don't have time to go shopping and cook, but they want to cook at home because they feel like it's healthier and more affordable. And so there's a whole category of businesses that have been developed where you can actually go online, order enough food for a week. It'll come to your house with recipes and the ingredients, and then you take it the rest of the way. You do the rest of the cooking. Blue Apron is one of the very first companies in this category, and they realized very early on how important transparency is. This is a page from their website where they show stories about all of the different distributors and manufacturers of where they get their food. They're tapping into this idea of transparency. This company takes that a step further. So Everlane is a retailer in the US that has both an online presence and they've just started to open stores. They started in 2010, so they're a relatively new company, and they've been very successful. They do about $100 million in sales today, and they've doubled their sales every year for the past 3 years. Their tagline is radical transparency. And so not only are they extremely, they let you behind the scenes of their manufacturing, so they do profiles on the different factories that they use. But they take that a step further, and they're extremely transparent about their pricing as well. So this is another page from their website, and they show you for a particular item how much the materials cost, how much the labor costs, what the transportation is, what the duties are, and so what that cost of that item is, then what they sell it for, and what their competitors sell it for. It doesn't end there in terms of their transparency. They don't do sales. Instead, they give customers an option to pay what you wish when they have overstocks of items. So for this particular shirt, they give you 3 different prices that you could pay. And with each one of those prices, they tell you exactly what type of profit they'll make for it and what they'll reinvest back into their network, to their manufacturing and their distribution partners. So then you can make the choice as the customer how much you want to help support the business. That's real radical transparency. At Mozilla, we also practice transparency. And so one of the things that is really important to how we do our business is that people are safe and secure when they're online and that they have control of their own data. So we have our data privacy principles. And the first 3 of them are really, really important in terms of making sure people are safe and secure, and they also demonstrate how we are extremely transparent about how we collect and use people's data. So the idea of no surprises, the idea of user control, and the idea of limited data. And we make this very easy to find on our website, so there's no questions about what you can do with your own data and how we are using that as well. Okay, let's talk about why transparency is important. And what I have found is transparency is so important because it builds trust. And trust, we know, is the main ingredient that we need for loyalty, which means that we are going to keep customers coming back time and time again. The second idea that is a basis of open source software development is collaboration. And from an engineering standpoint, there's a belief when you're working on an open source project that everyone has the same common ground. So what that means is that you believe that everyone else who's going to be working on the code with you has good intent, that you have a shared set of beliefs about the outcome, and that you're all working together to make something better. An unusual part of open source engineering and software development is that other people could be working on your code. You don't take it from beginning to end. So you really have to have a belief that the people who are going to work on your code after you are going to make it better, not worse. When you think about how that applies to marketing and branding programs, what I have found is that common ground also exists when you're able to build peer-to-peer platforms and peer-to-peer communities. When you think about the value that that brings from a business standpoint, it's the idea of the network effect. So the network effect is the positive economic value that one new user brings to the rest of the users who are in this same network or this same community. And as you can see by this diagram, it's exponential. So one new user brings multiple new connections, and that adds value to the whole equation. So let's talk about some businesses that are using network effects to their benefit. And a great example of that is Gojek, which is based right here in Indonesia. I know that a company that is this big there's probably a lot of discussions about Gojek, and what I find so interesting is what it has done not only for the network effect with the driver partners, but also with the network of services that are now able to, that you have kind of at your fingertips that can come to you, as well as the impact that Gojek has made on cashless payments, and really using the network effect to introduce that as an option for many people for whom that wasn't an option before. So this is a great example of network effects in action. Another example of network effects is National Geographic's Instagram account. As you can see up here, they have 89.5 million followers. That is the largest number of followers of any Instagram account out there. And the way that National Geographic has done this is through a network effect. So they have turned over their Instagram account to hundreds of photographers. And these photographers are able to post their work with very minimal approval from the National Geographic team. So what this allows is a network effect from the photographers' network out to the rest of the followers for the National Geographic Instagram account. They're able to have exponential reach because they have collaborated with these photographers to build on their audiences and to invite other audiences in as well. So what I've seen as the benefit of collaboration is that it's a force multiplier. It enables you to reach out to communities and audiences you would never be able to get on your own. Then last but not least, let's talk about participation. So again, from an engineering standpoint and a software development standpoint, there's a philosophy of no lurking allowed. And what that means is there's a belief that everybody has something to contribute. So no matter if you're actually developing and checking in code, if you're doing QA, if you're mentoring someone, or if you're providing financial assistance to a project, everybody has something to give. And no one should just be sitting on the sidelines. When I think about the translation of that from a marketing standpoint, what I have found is that participation really means that you are intentionally inviting diversity into your conversations. And you're designing programs and processes to do that. So again, let's look at some examples. To reinforce why participation is valuable from a business standpoint, this is one graph that shows how diversity at the executive team and board of directors level improves financial performance. So the yellow bar are boards and executive teams that have a low representation of diversity, and the blue bars are executive teams and board of directors that have a high representation of diversity. The first graph is teams that are ethnically diverse. The second graph are teams that have gender diversity. And you can see in both cases that those companies are more successful from a financial standpoint than companies who don't have diversity at those leadership levels. There's also data that reinforces this idea of the importance of diversity from a venture capital standpoint as well. So VCs that have more female leaders in their ranks have both a better percentage points of returns, as well as almost a 10% better profitability in their exit strategies as well. So when you have participation, you get diversity, and when you have diversity, you have better business impact. This is an example of a project in Taiwan. It's called V-Taiwan, and you see participation often showing up in the civic center or in the civic category. What this is a great way for citizens and policy experts and government officials to participate. On this website, anyone can raise an issue that the government should invest in. That issue is then evaluated by policy experts and then recommended to the government to invest in or not. The other really important aspect of this program is that while this conversation starts online, they often invite people offline for community discussions around these ideas as well. You can apply this to the commercial sector also, and someone who's done this really well is Lego. So about 10 years ago, Lego developed something that they called their Ideas Platform. And on their Ideas Platform, anybody can submit an idea. And when you ask for participation in that manner, what that is often called is crowdsourcing. So you're opening up the idea generation to anyone who wants to participate, and you're giving them a way to submit their idea. Lego does this on this website. So anyone can submit an idea for Lego kits, and then that idea is either voted up or voted down by the community who participates on the Ideas Platform. Then the most supported ideas are reviewed by internal teams at Lego, and they decide from there what they're actually going to put on the shelves. So this is a great example last year of the best-selling Lego kit actually was generated from this Lego's Ideas Platform. It sold out in 24 hours on Amazon.com, and it was the Women of NASA Lego kit. So this is a great example of something that Lego may not have ever come up with on their own. But because they had this Ideas Platform and they had people outside of their company participating, they were able to come up with something that was that big of a hit with their customers. So what I have found is that we are also able to apply this idea inside Mozilla, not surprisingly. And about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we saw the opportunity to evolve our overall brand identity system for Mozilla so it could work harder for us and help more people understand what Mozilla is all about. Traditionally, when you do a brand design, this is something that is almost always done behind closed doors, and then you reveal it to the world, and sometimes people love it, and sometimes they don't. What we decided to do was to approach our brand design completely differently, and we wanted to do it in the open. So we made a decision to start a blog called Mozilla Open Design, and we put all of our work up there for the entire 9 months we were working on the project. And we invited community participation, we invited comments, and we participated in that dialogue. This was not crowdsourcing, however. We were working with a design agency to create the different design options, but we did want to make sure that we were listening to a wide range of voices in terms of what the best options could be. So over the course of 9 months, we had over 20,000 comments that came in. So that was a lot for us to manage, it was a lot for us to participate in, but it was so valuable for us. So this is an example of the blog post that we shared when we had about 8 different design directions. I know you can't see this, the numbers are pretty small, but we had over 500 comments on this one blog post. And then we also had separate posts about all the different directions that we had. So that really helped us understand what made sense to people, what didn't make sense to people, and these were not necessarily just engineers and not necessarily just people that were familiar with Mozilla. People who were familiar with design participated, and just interested people from all over the world participated. What that really helped us do is to see where people's interest was. And that design in the upper right-hand corner was the one that received the most feedback during this initial phase. That's the design that eventually inspired the new logo that we have today. Another thing that happened, which was an unintended side effect of us doing our brand design very differently, is that a lot of press picked it up also, because people were so curious about how we were designing something in the open and asking for that type of participation. So Fast Company is a publication that covers business and design, and they started to cover this. So when we launched our blog in June of 2015, this is the article that they wrote. Uh-oh, Mozilla is open sourcing its new logo design. That was like a big, danger, this is gonna be a disaster. Let's see what happens with these folks. And then when we released our first batch of work in August of 2015, they were a little more neutral, I guess, in their coverage. And they said, is open source design any good? Mozilla's finding out. Okay, so they were giving us a little bit of the benefit of the doubt then. Fast forward to January of 2016 when we released our new logo design, and this is how they covered it. They said, Mozilla just proved that it's possible to open source good design. And that was really satisfying for us, not just because of the coverage, but because we were able to prove to the design industry that you could use open source values and you could have really good work as the outcome. And so what I found in applying this idea of participation into marketing and branding strategies is that it's so important, because what it really does, it ensures that you have invention and innovation, because it brings diversity into the conversation. And diversity is so critical for invention and innovation because it makes sure that you're not just talking to the same people you always talk to. It gets you outside of your own thought bubble. So I hope I've been able to describe to you why I think applying open source ideas into marketing is both good for business and good for marketing and branding. And I will tell you that I am now an open source convert. I could never go back to doing it the old corporate way. I could never go back to working behind closed doors and having a ta-da moment where I just announce an idea and a solution on people. I think for the rest of my life, as I am in marketing and branding roles, I will definitely apply these ideas of transparency, collaboration, and participation because of what I've learned at Mozilla and the impact that I've seen it had, not just on our business, but on other corporations' businesses who have adopted these same ideas. So thank you very much.
It was really fascinating. Did everybody, are you all curious, wants to know more about Mozilla? Yes. Oh, we can invite, I hope you can come back again. Yeah, okay. Maybe at America can invite her again. Okay, now, why don't we listen from the floor? Yeah, we raise questions, is it okay? Yeah, we'd like to raise questions from the floor. Any questions from you that would like to share with us? Do not mind about your English, it's okay. Yeah? The most important thing is that you can, share with us. Thank you. We have one lady here in the front. Anybody else? Okay, another gentleman. Let's make it 3 questions in this first sequence. Anybody else? Let's start with you. Can you state your name and your department? Your department. for your major.
Okay, my name is Putri. I'm from International Marketing. I have questions actually for you. Okay, first, you've been working in many places before you work in Mozilla, such as McDonald's, Target. Is Mozilla your least favorite or your most favorite place to work? And what developments do you expect from you working in Mozilla? Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Can you pass it on to the next? Let's answer her first.
Yeah, that'd be great. So thank you for that question. Of course, Mozilla is my favorite place to work. But seriously, I feel very lucky to have had the other experiences that I've had in my career. I learned a lot. And each one of those places was like going back to school for me. Because at McDonald's, I really learned about how you need to make sure that, and this was part of the introduction, that you need to make sure that the ideas that you have from a corporate standpoint can actually be executed at a local standpoint. That was a really big learning that I had. When I worked for Target, I really learned about how important it was to create a community and to make sure that you weren't just kind of a big, nameless, faceless corporate brand, but that you had investments in all the communities that you were doing business in. And when I was in the consulting business, what I really was able to do was take my career in retail and apply that into so many different other types of categories. So that was the first time that I started to work with technology brands. I started to work with nonprofit brands like the Smithsonian, and that was so rewarding for me to take what I had learned previously and apply that into other areas. All of that said, I appreciate what I have been able to do at Mozilla because it's so different. Mozilla is a not-for-profit organization. We make technology products, but we also are in market with policy and advocacy work as well. I've learned so much about the internet, and I've learned so much about how people use the internet. And I've learned to work in a really different way. So I feel like being at Mozilla has really changed my outlook towards the world, and it's definitely changed my outlook towards marketing. So I very much appreciate what I've been able to take from my time here.
Yeah, I didn't catch your name again. What was your name again? Okay, where you're from? Very good. So you're in my class. Thank you. My student. Anybody else? Oh, I would like to call the presence of my boss here, my dean, Pak Desi. Yeah. Pak Desi, maybe you can come to the front here. Oh, okay. Yeah. And let's hear. Thank you, Pak Desi, for coming. It's been a pleasure. Come. Yeah. Please state your name and then your major.
My name is Nicholas. I major in computer science. My question is, regarding those three ideas, how do you apply those to like, smaller businesses? Like for multinational companies, that's pretty much easy to adopt, right? But for smaller businesses, for example, a mom and pop bakery, how do they adopt those three techniques? Thank you.
Thank you. So how do you adopt those or adapt those ideas to smaller businesses? I think you can start with the spirit of them and then really look at your day-to-day business and see how that might how it might apply. So what's an example of a mom and pop business?
For example, a local coffee shop.
A local coffee shop?
Yeah.
So let's think through those a little bit. So if I think about transparency, one of the ways that you could apply that is thinking about making sure you're being really clear about the origin of the beans, for instance. And if you have bakery items, are those made on site, or do you get those from a favorite bakery in the neighborhood also? So just those little touches, I think, can really help build trust about where things are coming from and build loyalty. You could also really think about collaboration with your suppliers as well. Would you like to showcase them in a different way? Or would you like to make sure that they are featuring your coffee, in their newsletters or their emails or their social media accounts to their customers? And so you have a network effect that way with your business partners. And then the other thing you could think about from a participation standpoint is get ideas from your customers. You know, have one of those like stick your idea for our next coffee of the month flavor in this little fishbowl. Something as easy as that is a great way to invite participation. And then once people start to see their ideas up on the menu board, that's a way that they're going to give you credit for thinking about something new because they came up with it first.
Thanks.
Well, this is a very interesting topic to discuss. Very marketing. Any questions from the marketing communications department? Because we're talking about value, we're talking about various techniques of marketing and the nature, transparency. Any questions from the marketing department? Yes, marketing communication department, ILCOM. Yes, at the back there.
Can I ask something? Back then, Mozilla Firefox is known to be used a lot, and also Opera. But now it's Chrome. Is there any way for Mozilla Firefox and Opera to fix itself to become popular again?
What's your name?
Ed Anton. Marketing communication.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, so can you say that again? Is there a way for Mozilla Firefox and
Opera?
And Opera, the browser Opera? And the question is, is there any way for us to collaborate?
What way for them to fix itself so it can be as popular as Chrome?
Oh, I see. How could Firefox be as popular as Chrome? Is that so? I think that when we think about Firefox and we think about Mozilla, so at Mozilla we're about 1,000 people worldwide. Chrome has 1,000 people in one office just working on one thing. You know, so we are at a very different scale than Google Chrome. And so the way we compete with them is not necessarily on beating them from a market share standpoint. We never will. What we need to do is make sure that we have enough market share to both maintain or to continue to be relevant with developers, as well as continue to influence other browsers and other software makers to do the right thing for their users. So that's how we measure our success. We want our products to be really good, and we spent last year rebuilding the Firefox desktop browser. We've also just launched Firefox Rocket in Indonesia, which is built to be a much more fast and lightweight mobile browser experience. So we're definitely investing in the performance of our products, but our ambition is not to beat Google Chrome from a market share standpoint. It's to offer really good products and to make sure that we're continuing to influence the software industry.
Any other questions? Can we raise the other gentleman? Can you? Yes, just 1 second. I saw the other hand raised from the back there. The gentleman with the hat, the white hat.
Hi.
And then after that, we'll go to you, and then I think we can resume.
Hi, I'm Rizky from Marketing Communication. I want to asking you about what is the Mozilla's marketing strategy to face their competitor?
So what's Mozilla's marketing strategy to,
Yes.
to face our competition?
Yeah.
So at Mozilla, we really have two brands. So one is Mozilla, which think of that as our corporate brand. It's the company that our people work for. And then we have Firefox, which is our product brand. And so we are focused from a marketing standpoint on making sure more people understand what Firefox is all about and choose our Firefox products. So the way we do that is we want people to think of Firefox as fast, we want to think of Firefox as private, as on your side, and respectful of you, and also as socially responsible. And so one of the ways we do that is to make sure that people know that Firefox is built by Mozilla, because as a non-profit organization, that differentiates us from places like Google, which are based on a for-profit model. So our marketing approach is really twofold. One, to make sure people understand what our products are and that they're good, but also that they're built by Mozilla, which is a different type of company, and we're there to make sure that the internet is healthy and for good. And that hopefully that's another reason that you would choose our products.
one thing. We still use Mozilla because our LMS, which is the learning system, we have to use Mozilla. We cannot use it with another. That is fun, yeah. Let's call it Venus Maya. Yeah. So, anybody else? The other gentleman. Yes, we have one more.
My name is Aldo. I'm from psychology. My question is, you said that everyone can participate in developing your software. How do you incentivize those who participate in developing your software to keep help developing more?
So how do we incentivize people to contribute to our software development and participate in that? So what we have found, and we've done lots of research on this, is what we need to do to make, when we're asking people to participate, one of the things to keep in mind, and this is a great question, is that you need to offer value back to your participants because they're providing value to you. So there needs to be a value exchange or reciprocal value. What we have found is that the value that we can offer to our contributors, to people who are helping us develop code, is a couple of different things. So one is we can give them mentors. So we can connect them with other people either who work for Mozilla full-time or other contributors who have more skills and more experience in them. So that's someone they can tap into to learn more and to increase their own skills. We can also give them credit. So on many Firefox products, you can see who actually contributed code. So in that way, we're helping our contributors build their own resume and making sure that they can take they can take the credit for the work that they've done and show other people that they've done it as well. And then the last thing that we offer is a community. So we offer the connection to other people like yourself who are learning the same things, and you, from a peer-to-peer standpoint, can help each other along the way as well.
So, you still have something in your belly that you'd like to share? Or how is this? Any other questions? Oh, perfect. Pak Desi, is it okay to raise some more questions? Okay. Yeah. We have two more, right? Yeah, the lady at the front. And another one is up. Yeah, okay. The other gentleman.
Sorry, there are questions from online learning students too.
Oh, we have also a question from outside Indonesia. This is nice. Yes, where's the question raised? Oh, there. Please read this. Yeah. I want to ask a question. How can we build the brand that is already broken, which is already disappointing customers? What do you think our first move to rebuild the brand again? And of course, to gain the customer's trust back. Thank you. And this is from Shelly Simada. Where is she from? Anyway, she's an out.
Shelly, where are you?
Yeah, well, she's the online student.
So that's a great question because some brands are broken, aren't they? And if you're responsible for fixing a brand, where would you start? So my advice would be to start by looking at yourself. So I would say what the company should go through is an exercise to think about what's special about us? What can we do that no one else out there can claim? What makes us really, really unique? So I'd say make a list of those things. Those could be things about your culture, about the people that you've hired, about the way you train your people. It could be things about your capabilities. So it could be the skills or the expertise that you have in developing products and services that nobody else has. It could be partnerships that you have or investments that you've made. It could be technology that you own. Think about those things that make you really unique. Write that down. And then I would make another list. And I would say, what do our audiences need from us? You have to think really hard about who your key audience is and really understand what they need. So what do they need from you? What are the problems that they have? What are the solutions that they're seeking? Then look at those two lists next to each other. Are there any problems or challenges that your audience has that only you are uniquely able to address? And I would say that's what you need to start to reinvent your brand based on.
Okay, Shini, is that okay? Can we move on? One more for Binus Online Learning's questions? Yeah, and then we move on to the floor. Another one. This is my question. At some companies, brand design are very sensitive to their customers. How do you anticipate about that? And this is from Noni Melinda.
So it's really important when you are designing a brand experience to make sure that you're including research along the way where you're asking your users what they think about it. And it's not just what do you think, do you like this or not? What you have to do is make sure you're helping them understand what you want that brand design to achieve. So you have to make sure in the research that you're giving your design criteria to your users as you're asking for their input. So what that means is you have to let them know what type of brand experience are you trying to create out there. For instance, I said with Firefox, we're trying to create a brand experience that's fast, that's private, that's on your side, and respectful, and that's socially responsible. So as we're doing any brand design work with Firefox, we're always asking people to give us feedback on whether the brand design that we're doing reflects that type of personality.
Let's go to the floor first, because I'm sure they're also very anxious to know about this branding information. Yes, the lady from the front part. We'll come back to Bo later on. And please, after the session is over, we have another speaker coming from Paaras and Ibu Rindang. Yes, we have the president Ibu Rindang here. She's the head of accounting, master degree. Yeah. Now, yes, can we continue? Carry on with the questions?
Her question is
all the same. Yeah, can we move on to the second one? Yes. Can you just stand up, please? Oh, I'm sorry, she has to run all over together. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Luke. I'm from Game Application and Technology. As you said, there are good examples of transparency. Are there any bad examples of transparency?
There must be. I'm trying to think of some. I've never had that question before. So what do you think? Can you think of some bad examples of transparency?
If I could remember, it was from the gaming industry. There were some companies that in games, they give out data from their item drops to some countries, but not to other countries. So it's kind of not fair for them.
That's a great example. So how so a gaming company that used data unfairly, and I think data is it's an interesting way to think about transparency, because data really is the currency today of most online experiences, isn't it? Data is being collected. Our data is being collected about us all the time, and sometimes used for good, and sometimes used for not good. And so I think if we had some more time to think about it, I think thinking about how companies have misused people's data and not been completely transparent about what's going to happen to what they're collecting from you are some great examples of bad transparency. Yeah, thank you.
We have a very interesting question raised from the Business Online Learning earlier, just now. She asked about how to become an expert on brand and marketing in a later age, she said. When you get older, how do you become a brand expert? Okay, she wants to be a brand expert later on. So what's the tips?
So how to become a brand expert? Get lots of jobs in branding. That would be my advice. But really, I think if that's something that you're passionate in, what I would recommend is work for lots of different types of companies. Because what I've had the opportunity to do over the years is think about branding for different types of customers, as well as for different types of categories and industries. And all of that, I draw on all of that experience every day. So I would say make sure you're getting a variety of experiences before you decide you want to go and be an expert in just one.
So which companies have you worked with before, besides the one that I said earlier? Mozilla, and then McDonald's, and then Smithsonian. What are the impact that you make makes more of your career, that gives you a big challenge to your career?
Yeah, I mean, I learned something from each of those. So, as I said before, when I was at McDonald's, I really learned about how to operationalize brand strategy. When I worked for Target, I really learned how to build community, how a corporation needs to build community. When I was in a consulting firm, I got to apply that to thinking about technology and nonprofits as well. So each step along the way, I learned something different that I could apply to the next situation.
The point is that is it okay? Another question, and then any question? Okay, we have questions. Okay, can you give the mic to him again?
Okay, I have one more question. So, if we know that this word always changing. One day this will be relevant, and the second day it won't be relevant. So my question is, if the current Mozilla brand is irrelevant, will you leave it in order to adapt with the most relevant brand?
So is, your question is, if Mozilla isn't relevant anymore, will we?
Will Mozilla leave the current brand and adapt with the current brand?
Will we continue to adapt to stay relevant? Is that?
Yes, I think. Yes, I think so.
Yeah, and yet, yes, we have to. We have to continue to stay relevant, and that means continuing to evolve to make sure that we understand that we continue to grow our own strengths and make sure that what we're good at, what's unique about us, is relevant to the world. So we do that in a number of different ways. We do that in making sure our product portfolio continues to evolve. So for instance, we are putting a lot more resources behind mobile products. Today, we've got a great desktop browser, but that's not enough. So how do we make sure we've got great mobile products? How do we make sure that we're also investing in things like VR and AR and voice assistants? Because that's where technology is going. So part of how we stay relevant is through our product portfolio, and then another way that we stay relevant is through our marketing messages. So you'll continue to see the types of social media we use change. You'll continue to see just the overall look and feel of our brand experience evolve, so we stay relevant to the audiences who are the most important for our products.
I just noticed that when talking about relevancy, we have some marketplace that change names, change their brand. From, you know, OLX, right? Everybody knows OLX. What was previously called? OLX? Anyone remember? Anyone remember? The gentleman from the computer science might probably know. Well, they changed to OLX. It's a marketplace. And it's growing. So sometimes names makes a difference, right? Even, well, you have to change. You have to alter your name, and because they're very profitable. They want to be profitable. So one way is to change. But in your case, you stick with what it is. And, well, we all use Mozilla, so it's very important. Yes? Would you like to say something?
Yeah, so what Jennifer just reminded me is another thing for Mozilla that helps us evolve, but also stay true to our values and our principles, is that we have something called the Mozilla Manifesto. And that was written about 10 years ago, and it was written by Mitchell Baker, who is our founder and chairwoman. And it is a 10-point plan about what the internet should feel like and the responsibility that the internet has to people that use the internet. And then just in March of this year, we added 4 new addendum to the manifesto as well, because we recognize that the internet has changed significantly in the last 10 years, and that we need to make sure that our vision for the internet stays current. So that's another great example of how we continue to evolve, but also stay consistent at the same time. And from a brand standpoint, that's always the challenge, to balance those two things out.
All right. Is that all? Because time is running out. All right. I'd like to invite Pak Desi, and here we'll call the president also of my future boss, which is our new dean, Pak Gatot. We have 2 things here. We have something to so Pak Desi will be giving this to Miss Ellen, and Pak Gatot to the American Embassy. It's a memento. Please take a picture. Please take a picture of Pak Gatot and Pak. Okay? Could you take a picture of Pak Desi? Alright. Okay. Can we have a picture of Ibu Linda? Please come with us. Any other lecturers here? I saw Ibu Mia before. Ibu Mia, Marketing Communications. Yes. Hotel Management, Accounting, Lucia. Ibu Luciana ada?
Also, we have a gift for the school from the U.S. Embassy to thank you for hosting us and introducing us to your student body and giving us an opportunity to interact with you all.
Okay, can I call upon Ibu Joyce, please join us? And Pak Aras, I saw Pak Aras before. Any other lecturer here? Okay, would you like to join us, please? You're also from Ball, right? Come. So, remain at your seat for a moment. Ibu, come. Ada dosen lagi? Ibu Mia mana Ibu Mia? Saya lihat Ibu Mia tadi. Ibu Amia Lutfia, Ibu Amia, bukan Ibu Mia. Ibu Amia Lutfia tadi saya lihat. Iya, come. Ibu, come. Semua dosen MPC, please come. Yeah, sure. Ya. Semua dosen MPC, siapa lagi? Ya. Okay, kita foto. Can we have a picture together first, please? Maybe, yes, right here. Pak Lutfi, come.
Yang
Please, another applause for the speakers. Okay, I hope to see you again. Yeah, in our next seminar. I will leave the mic to Ibu Linda. All right, thank you.
Selamat siang teman-teman semua. Ya, saya pakai bahasa aja ya. Nanti kalau saya ngomong bahasa lain ketawain kan malu. Oke, pertama-tama perkenalkan, nama saya Norman dari Marketing Business Graduate Program. Siang hari ini, ganteng-ganteng banget sih semua, cantik-cantik. Jadi minder saya bu. Kita minta waktunya sebentar aja nih kita ada dari Business Graduate Program, dari Magister Akuntansi, Master of Accounting, dan juga Strategic Marketing Communication dari Pak Aras. Mungkin sebagian teman-teman udah kenal sama Pak Aras ya, yang paling ganteng, yang paling eksis ya. Oke, kita mau memperkenalkan aja dua program Magister, salah satunya di Business Graduate Program. Kita total ada 5 sebetulnya, cuman untuk kesempatan kali ini kita ingin memperkenalkan 2 program Magister dari Business Graduate Program. Salah satunya ada Ibu Lindang di sini untuk memperkenalkan program Master of Accounting di Business Graduate Program. Oke, untuk mempersingkat waktu. Oke, langsung aja kita sampai ke Brunang, kita tepuk tangan dulu ya teman-teman.
Oke, selamat siang teman-teman ya, karena kan kalian udah di semester terakhir, benar? Lagi skripsi, benar? Siapa yang udah lulus? Wah, kok malu-malu sih di belakang banyak. Gini dong, kalau udah lulus yang panjang dong, ya. Yang tinggi maksudnya ya. Oke, selamat siang ya. Nama saya Linda Widuri. Mungkin slide-nya bisa minta tolong di display mas ya. Oke, jadi sesi ini saya nggak akan lama ya, mungkin paling lama 30 menit. Tolong diingetin kalau udah lewat 30 menit ya, karena kebiasaan kalau udah ngomong saya susah berhenti gitu. Saya akan memperkenalkan program S2 Akuntansi. Jadi siapa tahu abis ini kalian pengen, belum trauma kan S1 belum ya? Belum ya. Kalaupun trauma, kalau misalnya pun trauma, ya kayak lagu Pink lah, Beautiful Trauma ya. Jadi kalian pengen lagi sekolah gitu. Oke? Nah, karena saya dari S2 Akuntansi, maka saya akan bicara tentang S2 Akuntansi. Nanti Pak Aras akan bicara untuk S2 Komunikasi, lebih detailnya. Nah, dari sini berapa orang sih yang dari akuntansi? Saya pengen tahu. Dari sana banyak ya. Udah lulus semua atau masih menunggu jadwal? Kenapa? Belum lulus. Sudah, oke, selamat ya. Asik. Habis ini kita makan-makan. Ya. Maksudnya kamu traktir saya. Ya, jadi tagline dari S2 Akuntansi adalah Designing the Future of Globally Recognized Accounting Professions ya, in a digital environment ya. Jadi nanti auranya BIMNUS itu kan IT atau elektronik ya. Jadi itu yang akan kita bawakan. Oke, next. Oke. Nah, ini buat orang mungkin next lagi. Saya pakai ini aja kali ya. Saya pegang ini ya. Sorry. Ini apa nggak bisa ya? Ya, jadi ini saya buka ya untuk yang ya. Jadi ini acquiring, ini loh yang saya ingin share ya, acquiring an education bisa is the best way to not be left behind as technology races ahead. Jadi ini untuk ini sih berlaku untuk semua ya. Teknologi itu akan berkembang terus ya, sehingga supaya kita nggak ketinggalan, yang mau nggak mau kita harus selalu upgrade diri kita sendiri melalui pendidikan ya. Lalu terkait dengan profesi accountants ya, jadi accountants are in demand. Jadi sampai kapanpun akuntan itu pasti akan dicari. Jadi kalau misalnya ada rumor nanti kalau udah semua sudah teknologi udah di mana-mana, kan rumornya katanya nanti profesi akuntan udah nggak ada. Nah, itu nggak benar. Jadi akuntan itu akan tetap terus dibutuhkan, cuma fungsinya yang berubah nanti. Oke. Next. Nah, ya, sebelum saya ngomong lebih lanjut, saya mau kasih video nih buat kalian ya tentang bagaimana sih nantinya proses bisnis itu akan berubah. Ini hanya salah satu contoh saja. Ya, mungkin videonya bisa minta tolong di play.
Four years ago, we started to wonder, what would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store, so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. Welcome to Amazon Go. Use the Amazon Go app to enter. Then put away your phone and start shopping. It's really that simple. Take whatever you like. Anything you pick up is automatically added to your virtual cart. If you change your mind about that package, just put it back. Our technology will update your virtual cart automatically. So, how does it work? We used computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you find in self-driving cars. We call it Just Walk Out technology. Once you've got everything you want, you can just go. When you leave, our Just Walk Out technology adds up your virtual cart and charges your Amazon account. Your receipt is sent straight to the app, and you can keep going. Amazon Go.
Oke, ya. Ya, jadi nantinya, jadi ini perubahan aja sih ya. Kedepannya, mungkin yang biasanya kita belanja, ambil barang terus ngantri di kasir, nah sekarang udah enggak. Kedepan ini sudah ada di luar negeri sana, tapi memang di Indonesia belum masuk. Tapi sebentar lagi siapa yang tahu ya. Nah, kalau nanti kedepannya semuanya akan berubah menjadi seperti ini, terus kita akuntan harus bagaimana gitu kan? Ya, nah ini saya akan cepat saja. Oke, ini saya skip ya. Jadi ini backgroundnya. Ya, ini jadi ada chart ya yang menyatakan bahwa jumlah akuntan di Indonesia itu jika dibandingkan dengan negara tetangga kita, bahkan dengan Filipina pun kita masih kurang. Ya, jadi ini nih buat yang lulusan S1 akuntansi ya, kalian ditunggu di dunia kerja. Tentunya dengan ilmu yang update. Oke. Nah, pertanyaannya ngapain sih kita harus ambil S2 akuntansi, harus ambil S2 gitu lah ya. Untuk yang non akuntansi juga mungkin bisa. Kenapa sih kita harus ambil S2? Ya, ini karena karena ini lifelong learning. Jadi setelah kamu lulus S1, apakah artinya kamu berhenti belajar? Tidak. Ya, belajar itu akan terus. Oke. Terus yang kedua, skills are changing all the time. Jadi kebutuhan keterampilan itu juga akan berubah. Kayak tadi video yang tadi, apakah dengan skill yang beberapa tahun yang lalu kita dapat itu akan bisa catch up nggak dengan informasi dengan perubahan zaman? Ya, jadi akan terus berubah. Lalu jadi dulu kan kita bilang waktu masih muda sekolah, habis itu punya karir di satu company ya. Nah, itu ide seperti itu enggak mungkin masih bisa dijalankan ya, tetapi intinya studi itu tidak berhenti, belajar itu tidak bisa berhenti ya. Dan berikutnya, marketplace drive people to renew your skill every 5 years also. Jadi ya dunia di luar sana, ya tempat kamu nanti bekerja di industri nanti akan terus berubah, sehingga kamu diharapkan mengupgrade skill atau knowledge yang kamu punya sekarang. Jadi alasannya itu kenapa harus ambil S2. Nah, untuk yang akuntansi nih, mungkin pertanyaannya adalah saya harus ambil S2 atau saya harus ambil sertifikasi profesi, ya kan? Nah, untuk yang akuntansi, apa sih sertifikasi profesi yang kamu tahu? Sebutin satu aja. CPA, ya, betul. Dan itu CPA hanya satu dari sekian banyak. Ya, pertanyaannya apa sih? Kenapa sih? Jadi saya ambil S2 dulu atau pendidikan mana sih, S2 atau sertifikasi profesi? Ya, nah, dua-duanya penting. Oke, kita lihat. Tapi kalau kita lihat dari gambar ini adalah KKNI, ya, Kerangka Kualifikasi Nasional Indonesia. Ini yang berlaku di Indonesia, ya. Kalau kita lihat, kalau kamu lulus S1, ya, itu dianggapnya kalian level 6, ya. Kalau sertifikasi profesi level 7, sementara kalau S2 lebih tinggi lagi, ya, level 8. Ya, jadi kualifikasi kalian kalau antara profesi dengan master degree, ya, menurut KKNI itu lebih tinggi dengan master degree. Oke, nextnya. Oke. Nah, jadi keputusan kalian untuk menentukan saya ambil S2 atau sertifikasi profesi adalah ditentukan ini. Bagaimana kalian berpikir tentang ini? Where are you headed? Kamu mau ngapain? Kamu mau kemana? Aspirasi karir kamu apa? Ya, karir goal kamu apa? Kamu mau nanti kerjanya mau hanya di level entry atau junior staff terus, gitu? Atau kamu mau punya rencana? Atau kalian punya rencana ingin menjadi manajer misalnya, apalagi top level manager. Nah, itu yang harus kalian pertanyakan. Apakah 5 tahun yang akan datang saya mau tetap aja jadi junior staff, ya, level entry level aja, atau kalau 5 tahun ke depan saya harus at least jadi supervisor, lalu 7 tahun lagi saya jadi manajer misalnya. Nah, itu yang harus kalian pikirkan. Lalu depending on time and resources available, ya, seberapa banyak waktu yang kalian punya, ya, untuk karena kalau S2, terutama S2 akuntansi itu butuh hanya 3 semester. 3 semester itu artinya kurang lebih 1,5 tahun, ya. Itu kalian sudah bisa dapat gelar S2 akuntansi. Oke. Master degree has an advantage over professional certification, ya. Jadi kalau kita punya degree, masing-masing itu punya keuntungannya, ya. Terutama kalau nanti kalian mau masuk ke manajemen position. Berikutnya, depending organization that you want to work with or you currently work for. Jadi tergantung dari kamu masuk nih ke satu kantor. Nah, kantor itu environment-nya gimana? Kalau kantornya environment-nya kompetisinya sangat tinggi, sehingga ketika orang mau mempromosikan, kalau bos kamu mau mempromosikan seseorang yang sementara kalian punya kualifikasi yang sama-sama S1 misalnya, ya, bingung kan? Tetapi kalau kamu punya nilai lebih, value added dibandingkan dengan teman-teman sejawat, ya, kolega, nah itu akan harusnya itu bisa mendorong kalian untuk terus update, ya, skill kalian. Oke, next. Nah, kenapa BINUS? Kenapa harus S2 di BINUS? Ini untuk S2, semua S2, ya. Kenapa enggak di tempat lain misalnya? Oke. Ya, untuk S2 akuntansi ini adalah visi kita, ya. Kita mau sekarang sebenarnya sudah diterapkan kurikulum yang berbasis IT based curricula, tetapi juga memenuhi kebutuhan dari accounting profession, global accounting profession. Jadi kita bekerja sama, let's say misalnya ya dengan CIMA, ya, juga bekerja sama dengan CPA, dengan kalau untuk lokalnya pun kita kerjasama dengan IAI, ya. Jadi kita disupport oleh asosiasi profesi. Oke, jadi jangan takut kalau kita akan jalan sendirian, enggak. Oke, next. Nah, visinya ini ada 4, saya skip aja. Aktivitasnya, kegiatannya apa? Jadi kita ingin membentuk in-demand graduate. In-demand graduate itu lulusan yang diminati, yang melalui apa? Kegiatan academic excellence dengan lalu ada strategic partnership dengan asosiasi profesi, dengan universitas luar negeri, ya. Terus dan research impact. Ya, kita juga akan mendorong kalian untuk belajar sambil melakukan research. Oke. Nah, keunikan programnya. Bedanya apa sih? Uniknya apa sih program S2 akuntansi BINUS dengan univ lain misalnya? Ya. Jadi pertama ini ya, kita kurikulumnya dibentuk dengan mengacu pada Global Accounting Proficient Requirements yang tadi saya sebutkan, ya, misalnya SIMA, CPA, CA, ya, yang di bawah nama IAI. Lalu juga kita combine dengan IT based kurikulum, lalu juga dilengkapi dengan research kompetensi. Jadi kenapa kita masukkan research kompetensi? Karena nanti kalau kamu jadi manajer, pasti sedikit banyaknya kamu akan melakukan research, ya. Jadi paling tidak kamu tahu bagaimana sih melakukan riset itu. Apalagi kalian udah bikin skripsi, ya. Jadi harusnya ketika bikin tesis di S2 itu kan gampang lah, gitu. Ya, gampang kan bikin skripsi kan? Loh, buktinya lulus, ya kan? Oke, nah ini requirements-nya mungkin nanti dari Pak Norman yang akan menjelaskan lebih detail mengenai requirements, ya. Yang jelas jika IPK kalian lebih besar dari 3, ya, maka tidak perlu ikut TPA, ya. Nah, tidak perlu ikut TPA. TOEFL score jelas, ya. Lalu ada recommendation letter, ya, kamu bisa minta recommendation letter dari pembimbing atau dari kajur misalnya, ya. Ya, research outline sifatnya masih opsional, ya. Lalu interview. Nah, interview ini hanya dilakukan untuk mereka yang S1-nya bukan accounting. Tapi kalau kalian S1-nya accounting tidak perlu tidak perlu interview. Jadi cukup misalnya TOEFL dan recommendation letter. Oke, next. Nah, apa yang sudah kami lakukan? Kita sudah mengundang guest lecture, ya. Jadi ini semua adalah mahasiswa S1 akuntansi dengan guest lecture-nya. Jadi guest lecture pertama 30 Oktober itu dari Universitas luar negeri Australia, ya. Topiknya understanding finance as social practices, ya. Next juga. Nah, berikutnya guest lecture dari pembicara lokal juga ada, lalu dari internasional juga ada, dan kemarin kita sebenarnya sudah ada tambahan guest lecture lagi lebih banyak, ya. So far kita sudah melakukan 6 kali guest lecture dalam kurang dari 1 tahun, ya. 5 atau 6 kali sudah ada 6 kali kurang lebih dalam 1 tahun guest lecture sudah banyak yang kami undang, ya. Dan yang terakhir kita mengundang country financial controller, ya. Jadi yang kita undang nggak main-main, ya. Itu country financial controllernya dari perusahaan Reckitt Benckiser, ya. Kamu googling coba aja, itu dia produk-produk yang menjual produk obat-obatan, ya, terus pembersih rumah tangga, ya. Nah, itu yang kita undang country finance controllernya, ya. Jadi bukan cuma manajer level menengah, tapi langsung top manajernya. Oke. Nah, ini nih, ya. Ini slide penutup harusnya ada quote yang bagus. Katanya, the sick are not required by law to consult doctors, ya. And the injured are not compelled to employ lawyers to seek redress. Jadi kalau kamu sakit, nggak ada yang mewajibkan, tidak ada hukum yang mewajibkan kalau kamu harus berobat, ya. Tapi most companies are required to have a financial audit by an accountant. Ya, tapi laporan keuangan itu diwajibkan untuk diaudit oleh perusahaan. Secara hukum itu diatur. Jadi kamu bisa bayangkan bagaimana nanti peranan kamu sebagai akuntan, terutama akuntan yang berwawasan, ya itu pastinya akan sangat dibutuhkan. Oke, next masih ada? Nah, itu saja. Thank you. Jika ada pertanyaan, silakan ketemu saya ya di lantai 8 ya, atau bisa juga ke marketing dengan Pak Norman. Pak Normannya tadi mana? Ya, Pak Norman yang mungkin sedang di luar. Untuk tanya-tanya programnya seperti apa ya, kalau mau langsung ketemu saya juga silakan. Nah, untuk berikutnya saya serahkan ke Pak Aras ya, silakan Pak.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Rinda. Tapi sesi saya sepertinya udah habis mahasiswanya nih. Baik, selamat siang semuanya, belum siang ya. Oke, perkenalkan saya Muhammad Aras, Ketua Prodi Magister Ilmu Komunikasi, khususnya kajian strategi marketing communication. Pada hari ini kami berdua bertugas untuk menyampaikan terkait S2 Akuntansi dan Komunikasi. Oke. Oke, baik. Mohon waktunya 15 menit. Mudah-mudahan nggak lebih. Ya, sepertinya ini jam yang penting makan siang ya. Oke, ini Magister Ilmu Komunikasi yang disingkat dengan MIK. Konsentrasi kami hari ini adalah terkait Master of Strategic Marketing Communication. Yang ini saya sampaikan adalah terkait program studi yang ada di BINUS sekarang. Udah 5 prodi S2 ditambah akuntansi dan ilmu komunikasi yang baru jalan 2017. Nah, hari ini saya sejenak untuk menyampaikan secara singkat terkait Master of Strategic Marketing Communication. Nah, saya sebelum melanjutkan saya mau tanya yang mahasiswa S1 komunikasi di sini masih ada atau udah pada bubar semuanya? Yang S1 ilmu komunikasi? Nggak ada? Lah, ini jurusan apa? Akuntansi. Nah, Bu Rinda ini sabotase nih Bu Rinda. Tinggal akuntansi nih, ilmu komunikasi nggak ada. Lalu saya harus ngomong apa nih kalau kecuali kalau akuntansi mau kayak sebuah komunikasi. Waduh, ini nggak efektif jadinya Pak Norman ya. Baik, tapi nggak apa-apa, siapa tahu yang berminat. Jadi S2-nya di komunikasi. Bersaing sama Bu Rinda. Tapi secara pengalaman yang sudah ada mahasiswa accounting, mahasiswanya Bu Rinda juga masuk di saya. Tapi saya permisi sama kakak prodinya, mohon izin, betul ada mahasiswa yang masuk di saya. Oke, saya lanjutkan. Next, coba. Lanjut. Nah, ini pertama, kebanyakan yang bedanya latar belakang, visi misi, deskripsi peminatan prodi, kurikulum, kenapa harus nikah kuliahnya, keunggulannya apa, strategi pembelajaran, distribusi mata kuliah, dan terakhir tenaga dosen. Saya langsung aja ya, visi misi mungkin ini ya latar belakang kenapa S2 ilmu komunikasi ada di BINUS. Karena pertama kita punya S1 ilmu komunikasi yang terdiri dari 2 prodi, 2 jurusan, marketing communication dan mass communication, sehingga kita mendirikan S2 komunikasi dengan pertimbangan itu. Kemudian dosen-dosen sudah memadai, doktor semakin bertambah, kemudian profesor juga demikian. Nah, yang kedua, menjawab kebutuhan industri hari ini, komunikasi serba digital. Jadi sekalian malah lebih jago dari saya memanfaatkan teknologi digital hari ini. Jadi komunikasi serba digital, ya. Oke, next. Nah, ini visi misinya saya langgahi saja. Next. Nah, tujuan prodi S2 ilmu komunikasi untuk strategi marketing communication ini ada beberapa tujuan yang secara detail, tapi intinya adalah tujuan prodi ini mencetak, bisa di-enter satu kali lagi, ya, mencetak leader dan ahli di bidang marketing communication dan corporate communication. Oke, next. Nah, ini peminatan, deskripsi peminatan prodi MIK yaitu strategi marketing communications. Jadi kita baru satu peminatan. Nah, ke depan seiring dengan waktu, kalau udah lebih berkembang lagi, nanti kita akan buka mass communication strategi. Oke, lanjutkan. Nah, konsep kurikulumnya ini paling penting barangkali. Konsep kurikulumnya integrated marketing communication. Jadi komunikasi yang terintegrasi. Kenapa terintegrasi? Karena hari ini udah komunikasi yang serba digital, tapi tidak melupakan yang konvensional. Biasanya komunikasi serba digital melalui sosial media seterusnya mungkin tidak hanya mengandalkan itu, tapi juga komunikasi konvensional dibutuhkan, misalnya interpersonal communication dan seterusnya. Jadi biasanya hebat komunikasi di sosial media, tapi secara interpersonal itu kita butuh ilmunya, gitu ya. Oke, kita lanjutkan. Nah, kenapa harus S2 ilmu komunikasi? Pertama, pastinya dukungan BINUS dengan akreditasi A. Kemudian kurikulum berbasis integrated marketing communication. Kemudian tren komunikasi hari ini yang serba digital seperti yang sudah saya sampaikan tadi. Kemudian yang terakhir itu kebutuhan industri yang hari ini memang tidak bisa dibantah lagi. Industri-industri, perusahaan itu semua serba digital. Tidak hanya industri tapi juga masyarakat. Oke, next. Nah, ini keunggulannya, kurikulum dirancang berdasarkan tren komunikasi berbasis ICT. Jadi kurikulum mata kuliahnya ada unsur ICT-nya, ya. Jadi kita menyesuaikan tren hari ini. Kemudian tim teachingnya ada dosen praktisi dan akademisi. Dosen akademisinya semuanya berpendidikan paling rendah doktor. Jadi ngajar di S2 tidak bisa kualifikasi S2. Jadi dia harus doktor, makanya dosen-dosennya semuanya doktor dan profesor. Oke, strategi pembelajaran, bentar. Strategi pembelajaran, case study, kemudian ada blended learning, dan yang paling penting terlatih dalam penulisan publikasi ilmiah. Dan syaratnya itu ini aturan pemerintah sekarang lagi mau lanjut S2 atau lanjut S3, semua harus belajar menulis publikasi jurnal internasional di BINUS. Nah, pakarnya, karena BINUS hari ini sebagai perguruan tinggi swasta nomor 1 di Indonesia. Oke, kemudian masa studi, masa studi 3 semester. Kalau di S1 kamu butuh 4 tahun, di S2 tidak sampai 2 tahun, hanya 1,5 tahun. Jadi 3 semester. Oke, next. Nah, ini strategi pembelajarannya, mata kuliahnya itu hanya 7 mata kuliah di kelas. 3-nya adalah terkait riset, jadi sangat cepat. Oke, next. Nah, ini mata kuliahnya, jadi hanya 3 semester, sangat sedikit ya. Oke, next. Nah, mau jadi apa lulusannya? Lulusannya yang pertama ada praktisi di situ. Nih, praktisi di bawah dosen. Pertanyaannya mahasiswa, kenapa Pak dosen ditaruh di bawah? Biasanya kalau udah melalang buana jadi praktisi, jadi manajer dan seterusnya, pensiun, udah tua jadi dosen. Terakhir, biasanya kalau udah tua-tua tuh jadi dosen. Oke, kenapa di sini ada leadernya manajer di underline, di bold? Karena target kami alumni S2 Strategi Marketing Communication ini adalah jadi leader, paling tidak sebagai supervisor. Makanya ada namanya strategi marketing communication. Kata strategi itu adalah substansi dari filosofi dari bahwa orang-orang yang jadi yang perancang strategi di sebuah perusahaan rata-rata itu supervisor di atas. Jadi alumninya diharapkan bisa jadi paling rendah supervisor. Jadi adanya di top manajemen. Oke, kemudian selanjutnya, nah di enter 1 kali, terus Ya, ini dosen-dosennya, akademisi, staf pengajar, dan praktisi. Staf pengajarnya ada Profesor Dr. Edi Abrahman, ini sebagai Director of Binus Berlin Program. Kemudian ada Dr. Haja Novi, mungkin pernah ngajar dulu kalau yang komunikasi. Kemudian ada Pak Dr. Bambang. Kemudian ada saya sendiri di sini nomor 4. Ada Pak Zinggara ada di ruangan ini. Mana Pak Zinggara bisa berdiri? Pak Zinggara, kemudian Dr. Ulani Yunus, Dr. Mario Basuki, Dr. Fireni Puspita, Dr. Amia Lutfia. Ini dokter baru nih, bisa berdiri sekarang. Minta tolong. Ini kebetulan ada di sini. Yang paling cantik di S3, di S2 ini. Dokter baru. Oke, kita close. Kemudian ada Pak Dr. Razak Muzin yang hari ini lagi di luar daerah. Kemudian Pak Dr. Arsad dan Dr. Irmawan. Nah, praktisinya ini dosen praktisi ada Dr. Ahmad Irawan, ini wakil direktur Net TV. Kemudian Dr. Hanafi Metro TV, Dr. Hafiz ini Metro TV. Kemudian Triadi Senawirawan ini Senior Vice President di DBS Digital Marketing DBS Indonesia. Kemudian Jimmy Rambing, ini Corporate PR and Media Relation PT Siloam International Hospitals. Kemudian banyak lagi dosen tamu. Saya nggak tulis satu karena banyak dosen tamu rata-rata dari praktisi. Semua praktisi di PR, ya. Baik, next. Nah, ini foto-foto mahasiswa angkatan pertama. Ini mereka yang desain. Bukan Pak Aras yang tulis. Semua harus lulus, kata mereka, bukan kata saya. Ya, dia kata harus lulus. Ya. Oke, next. Nah, ini angkatan kedua. Ini mahasiswa angkatan kedua. Next lagi gambar berikutnya. Ini MIK angkatan pertama dan kedua. Nih, gabung di dosen tamu. Next lagi. Nah, ini kegiatan mahasiswa baru dan kelas perkuliahan. Ini Pak Rektor lagi memberikan pengarahan kepada mahasiswa baru. Kemudian suasana kelas S2. Ini ada dan teman-teman yang lain. Next. Nah, ini kelas dosen tamu. Terus ya, ini dosen tamu lagi serahan, mereka lagi cerita ya. Oke, next. Enter lagi, akhirnya, sebentar. Akhirnya indah pada waktunya. Anda wisuda dengan gelar Magister Ilmu Komunikasi. Terima kasih dari saya. Saya kembalikan ke yang marketing.
Minta tepuk tangannya sekali lagi dong buat Pak Hans. Ini tadi saya ngomong pertama kali nggak segini, tapi sekarang udah banyak. Saya ngomong sama kursi ya kayaknya sekarang. Oke, kebetulan juga karena orangnya sedikit, saya juga cuma bawa souvenir sedikit saat ini. Jadi ada bagusnya juga kali ya. Aku punya 4 nih. Ada notebook dari Binus Berlin Program buat teman-teman yang mau partisipasi. Nanya atau diskusi sama Ibu Rindang atau Pak Aras boleh tunjuk tangan, nanti aku kasih ini. Ayo jangan malu-malu, ini tinggal 4, aku nggak punya stok lagi beneran. Ada yang mau nanya, mau diskusi? Ya, boleh.
Nama saya Michelle, and aku dari akuntansi. Mau nanya kalau untuk S2 itu bisa kelas malam atau kelas dari dulu. Terima kasih.
Oke, terima kasih. Namanya siapa tadi? Sheila.
Michelle.
Oh, Michelle, thank you ya pertanyaannya. Pertanyaannya adalah tadi apa, S2 kelasnya pagi atau malam? Ada kelas malam nggak? Memang kelas malam. Karena kalau S2 kalau S2 itu kan banyak yang sudah kerja ya, kayak yang sekarang itu hampir 90% sudah kerja mahasiswanya. Jadi memang kelasnya malam, tidak ada kelas pagi. Gitu. Terima kasih. Tadi Pak Aras mungkin juga sama ya.
Baik, terima kasih. Tapi saya mau tanya kembali, kamu melamar S2 di akuntansi atau komunikasi? Tapi kayaknya komunikasi Bu, saya bisa baca telepati. Oke, tambahan dari saya, kita rata-rata kelasnya itu setengah tujuh sampai jam 9 malam, dan kuliahnya itu seminggu tidak tiap hari. Ada setiap minggu pertemuannya ditambah dengan kelas enrichment, itu jadi 2 hari. Jadi lumayan, jadi rata-rata yang kerja pulang kantor, dari kantor langsung ke binus, langsung lantai 8. Bisa ketemu saya, bisa ketemu Rinda. Tapi kalau komunikasi nggak ketemu Rinda, ketemu saya pastinya. Oke, saya kira itu, dan kelasnya seminggu ya paling banyak 3 kali, ditambah dengan kelas bimbingan, tesis dan artikel. Karena di semester 1 itu kita udah mulai memberikan pembimbingan terkait tesis, sehingga bisa selesai tepat waktu. Oke, demikian, terima kasih.
Pertanyaan buat Michelle ya. Michelle, kamu dapat buku dari aku.
Langsung dapat buku ya.
Saya kasih buku pada sebelah kanan nih Pak Aras berinya.
Bisa.
Kalau gitu saya bawa 1 kardus tadi ya bukunya. Oke, berikutnya.
Selamat siang Ibu, Bu Rinda dan Pak Aras. Saya ingin bertanya, ini kan jadwal pendaftarannya itu kan 12 Juli sampai 8 Agustus ya Bu. Nah, sedangkan saya sendiri masih menunggu jadwal sidang yang belum keluar. Doakan lulus teman-teman. Nah, itu bagaimana Bu? Sedangkan kan kita belum dapat SKL ya. Lalu ada nggak sih Bu beasiswa untuk S2 di BINUS ini? Terima kasih.
Oke, terkait dengan tanggal ya, terima kasih. Namanya siapa tadi?
Hani Bu.
Hani ya. Ya, kalau pujinya saya ya, mudah-mudahan. Untuk tanggalnya itu bisa dikomunikasikan ke Pak Norman, karena beliau yang ngatur masalah tanggal. Bagaimana Pak biasanya Pak?
Ya, kalau untuk saat ini udah belum lulus ya, tinggal nunggu sidang ya. Kalau untuk beasiswa buat teman-teman juga ya, kita ada beasiswa di list namanya. Jadi buat kalian yang di sini berprestasi dan masuk list kita ada potongan sampai 8 juta rupiah. Makanya kuliahnya rajin-rajin ya, biar dapat diskon. Nah, karena penentunya di saya, nanti saya ngarahin mau ke Bu Rina ke Pak Aras nih. Ya.
Jadi gimana Pak, yang masalah tanggalnya masih keburu nggak untuk daftar?
Kalau ada surat keterangan lulusnya bisa, tapi untuk periode September ya, seperti itu. Nanti kita bisa bikin surat pernyataan, kalau ijazahnya nanti menyusul, seperti itu sih.
Oke, tunggu Pak, boleh dikasih tahu nggak Pak Norman berapa sih biayanya? Karena anak tadi dari online learning juga ada yang tanya berapa biaya kuliah S2,
FK dan audit biayanya berapa?
Kalau untuk Maxi sendiri, kalau untuk binusian kita ada potongan sampai 2 juta. Jadi khusus spesial untuk binusian ya, itu di 13.550. Kalau normal regular 15.500. Itu bedanya, potongannya 2 juta. Dan kalau kalian berprestasi itu dapat potongan di list lagi. Jadi nggak per semester, kita nggak ada DP 3 lagi di sini. Jadi semua satu paket 1 semester. Kan kurang apa? Udah levelnya binus juga, ya kan? Dosennya juga berkualitas juga. Ya, jadi kalian kalau misalkan yang udah ya, itu langsung bisa hubungi saya di nomor telepon yang ada di market ticket yang saya bagikan. Nanti kalau ada mengenai tanggal pendaftaran boleh komunikasi sama saya dan teman-teman marketing.
Ada satu lagi Bu, pertanyaan untuk Pak Aras dari online learning. Untuk S2 sistem perkuliahannya reguler atau online? Kemudian bagaimana dengan akreditasinya?
Oke, untuk saat ini kita masih kelas yang reguler, belum online. Tapi tidak menutup kemungkinan ke depannya kalau banyak peminat terkait yang memilih jalur online, kita bisa buka kelas. Tapi untuk saat ini jawabannya masih reguler. Ya, terima kasih. Ya, akreditasi secara institusi kan tadi akreditasi A. Tapi kalau secara prodi kita baru mengajukan akreditasi di September bulan depan. Jadi di mahasiswa kalau nanti penamatan lulus ya pastinya sudah ada akreditasi. Kita namanya prodi baru itu kita akan berjuang untuk mendapatkan akreditasi yang mudah-mudahan kita bisa dapat nilai A atau nilai B gitu ya, karena kita prodi baru biasanya mulai pendirian itu langsung dikasih C, tapi pada saat akreditasi kita harus menaikkan level itu ya. Kalau baru berdiri itu namanya otomatis C ya, tapi kalau nanti karena kita September itu kita akreditasi, pengajuan akreditasi untuk prodi baru, saya dan Bu Linda Akuntansi sama Komunikasi itu pengajuannya di September. Jadi paling tahun ini kita akreditasi. Ya, kita harapkan bisa mendapatkan nilai yang bagus. Ya. Masih ada pertanyaan tadi yang sebelah sana yang laki-laki ya?
Siapa lagi yang ingin bertanya? Tadi sebelah sini nih saya lihat nih dengan angkat tangan nih. Udah? Oh, nggak mau buku jadi ya? Oh, nggak usah. Ayo ada lagi yang mau?
Mau nanya, kalau contoh murid berprestasi itu kayak gimana ya? Terus kalau murid berprestasi tapi dari kuliah lain bukan dari binisian itu apa dapat diskon potongan harga juga kalau masuk S2 di sini? Makasih.
Iya, ini ditujukan ke siapa nih, Bu Rinda?
Iya, sama lokasi S2-nya di mana?
Lokasi S2 saya kira Pak Norman bisa jawab ya. Di lantai 8 di sini kampus ini, lantai 8.
Di Alam Sutra kita belum ada untuk S2-nya. Tuh Pak Aras berundang pada pengen buka di Alam Sutra, gimana tuh Pak Aras?
Mau minta Alam Sutra? Ntar saya belah dua.
Banyak fansnya Alsut nih, Pak Aras Burinda. Jadi ada sampai nanti kita let you know ya. Maksudnya Bu Rindang sendiri udah concern untuk buka di Alam Sutra, dan untuk akuntansi memang beberapa peminat sih kita ada di situ. Nanti kalau lebih lanjut nanti kita infokan aja.
Iya, jadi kalau untuk kelas Alam Sutra sebetulnya saya juga sudah info ke Pak Norman, Pak kita buka dong di Alam Sutra. Karena kan kita juga punya kelas S1 akuntansi ya di Alam Sutra. Jadi daripada mereka pergi ke sini jauh gitu, kita buka aja di sana, jemput bola gitu. Tapi masalahnya kita kan kalau untuk buka kelas kan ada minimalnya ya Pak Norman ya. Betul. Berapa Pak minimalnya? 20. Nah kalau kamu bisa ngumpulin 20 dari Alam Sutra, mungkin kita bisa fight untuk buka di Alam Sutra gitu ya. Tetapi, kalaupun ternyata nanti nggak bisa buka di Alam Sutra, misalnya kurang dari 20, ya nggak apa-apa kan, jalan ke sini, masa nggak bosen sama kampus Alam Sutra, ya? Ya, tapi ya itu, ya maksud saya gini, kemungkinan untuk buka di Alam Sutra itu ada. Saya sendiri sudah lama minta tolong Pak Norman untuk coba Pak kita jajaki kemungkinan kita buka di Alam Sutra, gitu, ya. Itu ya Pak Norman ya. Oke. Ada pertanyaan lagi ya? Ada pertanyaan lagi?
Oh iya.
Cara mendapatkan beasiswa bagaimana? Cara mendapatkan beasiswa?
Beasiswa.
Boleh dari kamera Bu.
Oke. Cara mendapatkan beasiswa ya. Beasiswa yang tadi 8 juta tadi.
Iya.
Ya. Gimana Pak Norman dari ininya? Kayaknya Pak Norman yang
Iya, kalau untuk yang beasiswa sendiri itu khusus untuk binusian aja. Betul, jadi memang kita kasih special treatment untuk para binusian dengan nilai IPK tertentu, biasanya kalau tidak salah 3,5 ke atas, dan itu masuk dalam list. Harus masuk dalam list, nanti kita cek dulu, cross check namanya, kalau terdaftar baru kita berikan diskon, dan gratis formulir pendaftaran juga bagi mereka-mereka yang termasuk dalam list kita. Tapi itu berlaku hanya 1 tahun dari periode kelulusan ya. Betul. Jadi kalau misalkan wisudanya kalian sekarang, nanti it's Desember, itu berlaku sampai Desember lagi. tahun depan. Gitu. Jadi kalian kalau mau join kelas September tahun depan bisa seperti itu. Cuma kalau kalian wisudanya Agustus ini hati-hati, belum tentu bisa ikut kuliah September tahun depan, takutnya hangus. Seperti itu. Tadi siapa namanya? Lisha. Iya.
Iya, selamat siang. Saya mau nanya, kalau misalkan kita kuliah di luar itu kan ada S2 plus S3 sekalian gitu ya. Nah, di BINUS itu berlaku juga atau hanya S2 aja atau ada satu paket sekalian S3?
Oke. Namanya siapa, Mas?
Andre.
Andre, sorry. Ya, Andre, terima kasih pertanyaan. Ini maksudnya di luar negeri ya? Di luar negeri? Oh iya, memang. Kalau jadi gini ya, kalau di luar negeri itu biasanya memang S2 itu terbagi dua. S2 yang coursework itu artinya dia cuma ikut mata kuliah, ujian, bikin esai dan lain-lain, tapi tidak ada tesis. Kalaupun tesis itu sifatnya bobotnya kecil, namanya mini tesis atau project. Nah itu kalau coursework. Nah kalau yang coursework ini tidak bisa lanjut ke S3. Nah yang bisa lanjut ke S3 itu hanya mereka yang masternya itu by research. Jadi master by research artinya mereka tidak ada kuliah tapi tentang misalnya tentang research methodology ya, kalau bidangnya accounting mungkin tentang accounting filosofi gitu ya. Nah itu mereka bisa upgrade, bahkan mereka belum lulus S2 pun bisa lanjut S3 langsung ya. Jadi dia bisa upgrade, artinya gini, misalnya di tahun pertama dia daftar S2 ya, daftar S2 terus dia ujian proposal ya. Ujian proposal dia lulus, terus dia melakukan research, data collection, terus begitu mid review, dia bisa lanjutkan risetnya langsung ke S3. Dia bisa minta ujian, sidang untuk lanjut ke S3. Sehingga nanti pas completion seminarnya atau vivalnya itu S3 dia dapatnya. Jadi masuk S2 keluar S3 itu bisa. Tapi masa studinya tetap lebih panjang ya, bukan jadi 2 tahun atau 1,5 tahun, tapi tetap mungkin kurang lebih 3 atau 4 tahun gitu ya. Dan itu hanya berlaku untuk master by research. Nah bagaimana di Indonesia? Di Indonesia belum ada seperti itu, terutama di BINUS atau S2 akuntansi ya, karena di kita kan belum punya S3 akuntansi. Jadi ini agak sulit, karena kalau misalnya kita masuknya nanti S3 dan non accounting kan sayang ya, jadi tidak linear gitu. Oke, ya, makasih Andre. Thank you.
Terima kasih Andre, ini hadiahnya. Oke, sehubungan tangan dulu dong teman-teman. Berhubung souvenir dari saya sudah habis, jadi sesi pertanyaan saya tutup ya. Oke, final announcement dari saya. Ini kita nggak bosan-bosan ngasih special treatment sih buat BINUSian. Buat teman-teman yang daftar nih untuk kelas September, kita kuliah tanggal 10 September dan mau beli form sekarang, dan kalian ajak teman kalian, ini pasti semua penggemar Starbucks kan ya, aku kasih voucher MAP per referensi kalian 100.000. Kalau kalian mau lulus dulu, ajak dua temennya sampai 20, saya kasih 20 voucher, kita buka di Alam Sutra ya Bu. Oke, kalau ada pertanyaan lagi jangan ragu-ragu, jangan malu-malu. Ada nomor telepon saya di Marketing Kit, bisa kirim WhatsApp kalau malu ngomong sama saya, WhatsApp aja. Pak nih registrasi kayak gimana sih gini-gini? Gak usah malu-malu. Anytime kamu WhatsApp, subuh-subuh malam-malam saya jawab, insya Allah. Oke, mungkin kalau sudah Pak Aras, ada tambah lagi Bu Rina?
Ada pertanyaan.
Boleh Ibu?
Apakah tiap tahun berubah biaya?
Untuk tahun kita sekedar informasi akan ada kenaikan harga di bulan Maret 2019. Nah, jadi untuk harga yang tadi saya mention itu berlaku untuk tahun ini. Ya, jadi tahun depan harga kita sudah ada kenaikan. Berapa kenaikannya jumlahnya? Kami sendiri masih menunggu update-nya, seperti itu. Oke, kalau sudah tidak ada pertanyaan lagi, saya mengucapkan banyak terima kasih atas kehadiran dan partisipasinya dari teman-teman kalian. Mohon maaf jika ada kekurangan dan kesalahan. Selamat siang, selamat beraktivitas.